This is Metroid Talk Part 2. In the last installment, we talked only about Metroid and Super Metroid because those games are both really good, and we had some things to say about them.
Few things to say.
So we're going to pick up where the conversation left off, and we're going to talk about the games on N64 that featured Samus.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, go ahead. Anytime you're ready, Brian.
Getting there.
Okay. Just list all of them.
Okay.
Okay. Good talk.
Great. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Samus is in Smash Brothers, and that is it.
She is conspicuously absent from the N64,
Yeah.
and do we know why? Do you have any kind of inside gossip on that?
Yes. They did not know how to make a Metroid game in 3D, and they were bound and determined to make a Metroid game in 3D because it was the N64, and you kind of had to do that. Mario had a 3D, Zelda had a 3D, Donkey Kong Country had a 3D, although it is not a good game. Donkey Kong 64 is very boring and bloated. This was what you did. This was the dawn of the 32/64-bit era. You had to make everything 3D, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't figure out a way to make Metroid have all the appeal that it did before in a 3D environment. That comes later, and we're going to get to that. So really, like, if you were a Metroid fan and you owned an N64, which I was both, you were SOL until Smash Brothers, and then Smash Brothers, although is a great game, it's super fun. I love the original Smash Brothers. It's like a technical showpiece for the N64. It runs rock solid 60 frames a second. It started the entire platform fighting game genre, but it's a bit of a tease, because like, here's a model of Samus, looks good, it's a fun game, but I would like to play a Metroid game.
They would only put her in Smash Brothers if they were working on a N64 Metroid game, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think
Speaking
honestly,
of rumors.
I think honestly, like, it was probably like, let's just throw those guys a bone. Here's Samus in, and plus they're making a game with Nintendo characters, a fighting game. So like, they need to fill out the roster. So Samus was a logical fit to go there. But yeah, man, like, would have been nice. This is yet another feather in the cap of buying the N64 in 1996. Seemed like a great idea at the time, and it was. Yeah. But as time went down the line, you realize that, like, no, it turns out that PlayStation is really, really good.
Sony was onto something.
Yeah, they were onto something. The CD-ROM technology you speak of. What does this do? What does this do for me? And can it make video games?
The load times are just too long, though, Brian.
Yeah, no one's going to stand for that.
No one's going to stand for
those
load times.
So yeah, there's a long dark period of no Metroid games until 2002 when we get the first Metroid Prime.
So it's 8 years after Super Metroid, and we're now fully into the 3D era.
So you get Metroid Prime on the GameCube. But then you also get around that same time, well, actually the exact same time, Metroid Prime comes out day and date with Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance, which is a 2D Metroid game, like all the way through. It's great. I'm assuming you never played this one.
Nope.
Yep. Okay. So Metroid Fusion is everything that Super Metroid is just better graphics because the GBA was a little bit more of a juice to it than the Super Nintendo, but it's still within that style. So one thing I'll say about Metroid Fusion that I'll knock it is that there's so much reading. There's so much reading, and like, it really holds your hand. Like, the map will ding very brightly, like, you need to go here now after there's a bunch of exposition.
That's very un-Metroid-like.
It is very un-Metroid-like, and when we get to Zero Mission, we're going to talk about full-blown un-Metroid-like. But for Fusion, I think it's a great game. It's just that's the one thing that I would dial back on, is I don't need to read so much. They, like, good on them for trying to tell a story. It's about this parasite called X that infects Samus and becomes like a part of her and a part of her powers and stuff.
It sounds like foreshadowing for the most recent Metroid game that I've played.
It is. So Fusion, if you are currently playing Dread, I know you're towards the end of it. Fusion is like the prequel to Dread. Like, everything about Fusion carries over into Dread, and you can play.
Sounds like it.
You can play Fusion on if you have the Switch Online expansion pass. It's on the GBA section of that. So that comes out the same day as Prime, and I got them both because I love Metroid, and I was, it had been a long time, so I was kind of hard up for some Metroid action, and I played Fusion first, and then noped off that real quick because quite frankly, I found it boring. Still a good game, but it's a little bit boring. And then Metroid Prime just took up everything. That took up all my mind share of when that game came out. I think I got it Christmas of 2002. I had moved out. I had started college, and I was on college break. And so that's all I did.
Yeah, you didn't have anything else to go on.
No. Well, come on. It's me.
Well, and it's a college break.
Yeah, and it's a college break. You got nothing to do.
Yeah.
So it's either boost cars or play Metroid Prime.
Only two choices.
Only two choices. So Metroid Prime, the first one, man, oh man. What a you can't say over promised and then over delivered, I guess, because there really was no promise. It was like, hey, we're making this Metroid game. It's made by Americans. It's a first-person shooter.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Retro is based in Texas.
Oh.
Retro would later go on to do the newer Donkey Kong stuff, and then they worked on all of the Prime series. Now they're back on Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime 4 is being made by Retro. It was taken away from the people who were making it because the development wasn't going so hot. So Metroid's back with Retro, which is great news.
Oh, that is great news.
Yeah. And I want to say, didn't Retro do Dread as well?
Oh, that'd be incredible if that were true.
Yeah, I can't confirm that.
That's pretty good pedigree.
I don't think they did. We'll say they did or they didn't. I don't care. I'm not researching it. We're not researching it.
I'll research the back of this.
I tried. It wasn't on there. So I think to start talking about Metroid Prime, you have to talk about how disappointing it was when it was kind of announced to a lot of people.
Why?
Because it was a first-person shooter,
yes.
And everyone thought that, like, you had Halo coming out. Halo came out 1 year before, came out in 2001, and people thought that this was Nintendo trying to make a Halo and using Metroid to do it.
Okay, they're Me Tooing Halo.
Yeah, exactly. They're Me Tooing Halo, but not in that other Me Too kind of way.
A different context.
Oh boy. But yeah, like I remember I didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. Like I was excited that there's a new Metroid coming out, and I was kind of more of the let's see what it's like when it comes out.
Okay.
Like the preview coverage of it, I remember back in the day wasn't like super detailed. Like there wasn't a lot of hands-on stuff. It was kind of a hidden game until it was done, and then it came out and it blew minds. Like people were blown away at how faithfully Nintendo and Retro were able to port Super Metroid into a first-person game. And the first thing that you notice when you're playing Metroid Prime, the whole series, is that this isn't really a first-person shooter. It's in first person. You shoot things, but it is totally like a first-person exploration adventure game. It's Metroid. They made it first person. Yeah. And man, does it rule. So I just played this bad boy. I just finished the remaster here, and it just triggered all of what I thought made Metroid Prime good. The atmosphere is second to none. I love that how it doesn't hold your hand at all. And what's funny is like coming out at the same time as Fusion, where like all it does is hold your hand. Like Prime doesn't at all. So like there's times in that game where you get gloriously lost and there's no help at all. Like there's a mechanic in the game where you're scanning items, and a lot of the time, or enemies too, like you'll get tips within the body of that text that tells you like this enemy might be weak to this, or this stress crack on this wall might explode if you were to do something, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But never spells out exactly what to do or where to go. I don't remember if in the GameCube version it did this, but in the remaster it will. If you're walking around like aimlessly for a while, eventually the map will pop up, or like a little text blurb will pop up and it'll tell you like, hey, you might want to go explore like this general area over here.
Yeah.
But nowhere, not a pinpoint, none of that stuff. And everything that makes Super Metroid so good is in that game in spades: graphics, music, atmosphere, the feeling of solitude, which I think Metroid nails in all of its games. Like the feeling of being alone and against an entire universe.
You're right.
It's awesome. And when that game came out, when the original Metroid Prime came out, it was a game where, for me as a GameCube guy, and at this point, like this was like the second holiday cycle for the GameCube. It wasn't really moving units as they would have liked, for sure. But that Christmas, you had Animal Crossing for the first time in America came out, and you had Metroid Prime, and I believe the following Christmas, or maybe it was that one, was also Double Dash. No, I think Double Dash is 03. Anyway, from 02 to 03, GameCube is kind of established as like, this is the kind of experiences we're gonna have, and if you're a Nintendo fan, you are going to love us. If you aren't a Nintendo fan, this stuff probably isn't going to turn you into one. So like people who are younger than us that were like, you know, heavily invested in the PlayStation brand, like these games weren't really moving them to bring them over. But if I believe that if they gave Metroid Prime a chance,
I was gonna say
they actually played this game, and a lot of people did. It was you know, a decent selling title for Nintendo. But if more quote unquote hardcore gamers played this game, I think it would have sold GameCubes. But the problem was the GameCube had the reputation that it did, and it was kind of the way it was. So you had Metroid Prime got a sequel, which I'll briefly talk about. It's called Prime 2 Echoes. That's the only Prime game that I have not beaten. And in fact, I've only spent, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 hours total between the GameCube version and the Wii re-release on Trilogy. The only notes I could say about it is that it's more of Prime, but it's like harder. And Metroid Prime is a hard game. Like having just beat the last boss, like it took me like 4 or 5 tries. Again, the caveat, I'm not super good at video games, even though I love them. So I will, you know, I get challenged on games that aren't Street Fighter or vertical shooters. But Prime Echoes was even more of that. It was really, really challenging.
Wait, how close is Echoes to the original Metroid Prime in terms of style and gameplay and all that stuff?
So the gameplay is identical, and it came out in 04, so only 2 years after the fact. And it looks graphically, in terms of like tech stuff, like it looks very, very similar. The main hook in Echoes is that you have this like Echo like world. So like everything you see in Prime, you have like a dark version of where you can travel back and forth between like a light world and a dark world.
That sounds cool.
It is pretty cool. I'm gonna play this game eventually. I'm gonna sit down and play it. Like I said, I don't own it on GameCube anymore, but I have it on the Wii version, and sooner or later it's gonna come out in either solo piecemeal like Prime Remastered did, or on some trilogy. I mean, that's been rumored for like basically since the Switch came out.
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
Until
they did this one, which like I'll say this, like I would have loved Trilogy, obviously. Had they done Trilogy like Prime Remastered, then Jesus, what a value that would have been.
Yeah.
But if all they were going to do was just like up-res some you know, GameCube / Wii graphics, like kind of like how they did for the Mario 3D All-Star Collection. If they were just going to do that and re-release it, like I would have bought it, would have been fine. I'm a sucker. But I'm actually way happier that they actually spent time on the original Prime and made this remaster as good as it is. Like they did a really incredible job on it.
And we should say the reviews for the Prime remaster have been exceptional.
Yeah.
So, and I will own that, especially now that I played Dread. Now I'm a Metroid fan again. I was like, oh yeah, it turns out Metroid's pretty good.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew?
So I'll be playing Prime remastered within the next few weeks.
Yeah, sure. It's a really, really good game, and you foreshadowed an upcoming topic that we're going to discuss about like what's the best creative period of gaming. Mm-hmm. So for me, this era is it. The Xbox, GameCube, PS2 era of and a game that I would use as a reason why I think this era is like one of the most fruitfully creative eras of video games. Would be Metroid Prime. I would hold that up on a pedestal and be like, look at this thing, and then look at all these other games that came out after it that weren't as good, and then look at all these other things about it that they didn't even try to do, and so on and so forth. So I love this game, and the next one we can talk about is another Game Boy Advance game, because that came out before Metroid Prime 3, and that one's Zero Mission. What do you know about Zero Mission?
I believe it's a remake / remaster of the original Metroid that I had played in 1987.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is all of those things. It is a remake of Metroid 1 done up in GBA / Super Nintendo graphics. So it looks fantastic.
Well, I would imagine it looks like Super Metroid then, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so the GBA is basically a Super Nintendo, but with a little shot of gas in it. A little bit of D-ball to get those extra reps in.
A little bit of meth.
Yeah. No, I was going steroids. You're really hung up on meth today. You're really hung up on meth today, and that's fine. That's fine. So the big thing about Zero Mission is, yeah, it's a pound for pound remake of the original Metroid. However, once you beat the original Metroid, a whole nother game comes out. Like they like doubled.
What?
Yeah, they doubled Metroid basically. So you can play the whole game of Metroid, and at the end, when you beat Mother Brain, literally, if I remember right, like a wall comes down, and then you walk through, and here's another game, and all of that is original content. It's all brand new stuff. And
Brian, this is incredible.
No, dude.
Wait, do other people know about this?
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. But actually not enough, because Zero Mission comes out in 2005. And the DS is already out. Not a big deal. It didn't have Nintendogs or Mario Kart yet, but it's out.
Yeah.
And like Zero Mission is this weird stopgap release on GBA that kind of dovetails into the DS. So not a lot of people bought it. Not a lot of people played it. In 05, I'm assuming safely that you're not playing any other video games other than World of Warcraft.
You assume correctly.
Yeah, which is a mistake, but we'll let that play out in another episode.
It is not a mistake at all. It was the right decision at the time.
There we go. That's a man who's defending his principles, and we honor and respect it. But Zero Mission is a fantastic game. The secret double reverse bonus game that happens.
Did you know about that while you were playing the game? Did they? Well, let me actually ask it a different way. Did they include that as part of the marketing? Because before you answer, what a weird thing to do. In one sense, because it's so cool that they put all that extra content in.
Yeah.
But you would want to market that, so you're telling people it's not just a remake. But then if you market it, you're spoiling what would be an epic reveal.
So they, I don't have any direct memories of them actually spoiling that. I do think that probably some of the marketing copy around that and some of the preview coverage probably said like, hey, this is more than just a Metroid remake, but it's a Metroid remake. I do think that they kind of protected that secret, because when I played it, like I wasn't expecting that. It was
new to you, at least.
It was new to me, and I bought it right at launch.
Yeah.
Because in 2005, like, buddy, I'm playing Metroid games.
You weren't playing World of Warcraft?
Nope. No. That's a big negative 10-4. I was not playing World of Warcraft, but I was playing every Metroid game I can get my greasy little paws on for sure. And so Zero Mission's one of the best GBA games. It's fantastic. I would slot that in with like as good of a 2D Metroid game as you can make is Zero Mission. I recommend it to anyone who loves Metroid. Super duper good. Then we can go ahead and currently put a button on Metroid Prime, because 4 is supposed to be coming, and we'll talk about that.
Wait, did you talk about 3? Did I miss that?
Metroid Prime 3 is where I'm going here, Uncle Bob.
All right.
So that's comes out in 2007. It's a Wii game. And it's the first like big Wii game that isn't Zelda, and it comes out before Mario Galaxy. So it's like kind of neat that Nintendo's like, hey, we know you like Metroid.
This is a showcase.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and show this off.
Yeah.
And the main hook behind it is like they designed the game to be played with the Wii pointer, the IR control, and this guy, the Wii to Wii.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, I'm making stupid hand gestures, which is the Wii experience in a nutshell. But
stupid 10 years of stupid hand gestures is every Wii.
But I'll say this for my money. I'll say this. So I really thoroughly enjoy that control mechanic of not just this game, but in any game that used it well, and not just on the Wii, but even for the PlayStation Move. I played all of Killzone 3 with a PlayStation Move controller.
My God.
No, it's fantastic.
Wow.
Like it seriously works really, really well. So there's like the way it works is like you have like your pointer or whatever, so you see a cursor.
It's like a wand.
And you have a bounding box that you can't see around it. So when you want to turn, you move the cursor out of that, and you can adjust the bounding box to be, small for more finite control, or bigger if you want bigger movements. And if you took your time with it, if you weren't a baby who was screaming about how Nintendo makes baby games, and if you actually like sat down and learned how to use this, and I'll say the same thing for the Move controller on Killzone, if you're not a baby, you can learn how to play these things, and they rule. Like I feel, to me, it's like a 1-to-1. It's like a not quite virtual reality-esque experience. And Prime 3 did a great job of it. It's probably the best playing first-person game that uses this control scheme on the Wii, which like
that's 4 qualifiers.
Well, and it's also you're saying it's like you're like the nicest criminal in prison. Like I get it, but it really does control really well. Now in terms of gameplay and what the game does, now we're at a point where Metroid's starting to get wordy again. There's like dialogue. There's characters that Metroid has or Samus has like a whole like team of bounty hunters that she works with in the beginning of the game.
Is she talking in that game?
She doesn't have her voice yet in that game, and if she does, I don't remember it. But she will in Zero Mission, which we'll get to. But there's a lot more exposition. They try to tell more of a story in Prime 3, and it's fine. It's okay. I don't really remember much of it at all. And it's been years since I've played Prime 3. But I remember really enjoying it. I remember it being like a good send off to the whole series. And then that's it. Like there's no more Primes for a long time.
How about graphically and gameplay as compared to the first two Primes? Because we're on a different platform now. You talked about the controllers.
You're not. You're on the Wii. And like the Wii is, yes, more powerful than the GameCube, but like barely. So like if you play Twilight Princess, which is a Wii launch title, if you play it on the GameCube and versus the Wii, it's an identical game except for on the Wii it's 16:9, and then everything's mirrored, of course, because they had to make Link right-handed to compensate for the Wii remote being in the right hand.
I remember that. Yeah.
So rather than change that, they just mirrored the entire game, which is so cool. It's such a quick way to make money. But yeah, the Prime 3 does look better than 1 and 2. They do so in 2007. I don't know if you remember this. You probably don't, because you're probably wasting your time playing World of Warcraft.
Still playing World of Warcraft.
So light bloom is like the thing. Like bloom lighting is all over video games at this point. Like if you play Halo, the original 360 version of Halo 3, like anytime there's a light source, there's this big bloom, and Metroid Prime 3 is lousy with it. But at the time it was like, hey, we can do this one. Like we might not be able to do all this like map texture stuff, but we can do bloom lighting, and we're gonna do it. Because that's like one of the main things I remember about the art style and the graphics is all this bloom everywhere.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a good looking game. I recommend playing the entire Prime series, and I recommend to myself going back to finish Prime 2, just because it's the only dark spot in the whole Metroid series that I have. So before I move on to Zero Mission, do you have any Prime related questions?
No, except to say that I'm jealous of you for playing those games. I want to play those games. Mm-hmm. We'll do a follow-up episode where I give you my thoughts about the Prime series.
If you just listened to my laser focused bullying on you playing World of Warcraft, we wouldn't have had this problem. We wouldn't have had the problem.
Well, it's going to be a recurring issue on many different episodes of the show. Because
hey, Robbie, did you play this? No.
Yeah,
playing World of Warcraft.
At any point between 2004, late 2004, and mid 2010, if you're asking me if I played something other than World of Warcraft, the answer is probably going to be no. It's going to be a hard no.
Okay. Well, I mean, fair is fair.
Yeah, but it's no good games really came out during that time.
None at all. Like Grand Theft Auto 3. Nah. This little indie, this little upstart indie.
Grand Theft Auto 3. Yeah, I think I heard of that.
Yeah. It didn't move. No one really talks about it. It's not that big of a deal.
Right. Have they remastered that?
Nah. They just did. There was no 1 or 2, just 3, and then they cut it off. They don't do anything else. You could probably buy it for like 6 cents, which I'm sure that's true because it sold like a zillion copies. So Prime's done, GBA's done, all that stuff's done. The dishes are done. Now we get to talk about the sole example of a terrible, terrible Metroid game, and that is Metroid Other M. So a little setup. There was a game that was announced, or at least it was like soft announced, leaked, whatever you want to call it, called Metroid Dread, way back in the day for the Wii. I want to say people started to write about it in like 2009, 10, somewhere in there. And it was called straight up Metroid Dread, and it was rumored to be a polygonal 2D Metroid game. So the internet and Metroid fans on the internet saw this rumor or leak or whatever you want to call it, and we rejoiced with joy and satisfaction that we were going to get the game that we desperately wanted. Then they said that, oh, well, you know who's helping us make this game is Tecmo's Team Ninja. Okay. They made Ninja Gaiden on the original Xbox. That's a great developer, game.
Sure.
But at this time, Ninja Gaiden came out in like 03, 04 Xbox. I think they had already released Ninja Gaiden 2 for the 360 at that point, which was more or less a big whiff. And there's some other things going on. Like Itagaki, who is like the founder and like the main force behind Team Ninja, he's gone. And I don't really remember the story about that, so I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that Itagaki leaves. I do know that Itagaki leaves to form a new studio that made Devil's Third, which is not a good game.
It's a good game if you judge it by only that cool song that came out related to it. That song is cool.
Or it's a good game if you bought like 10 copies of it sealed, because you can. That's like $30,000 right there, because it was made. Nintendo made that game, published it, and like wanted you to forget that they did. So it only came out. There's like, I think, rumors of less than 3,000 copies of that game released. It's a Nintendo published first party Wii U game. So if you bought that game and you have it sealed still, continue that seal and sit on it and sell it to a dummy, because it's a bad game worth a lot of money. But anywho, back to Metroid Other M. So Team Ninja's a part of it. Nintendo's a part of it. I'm a little leery now after the Team Ninja thing, but it's a Metroid game, so it's going to get my attention. It eventually comes out, and boy, oh boy, is it a stinker. It's really, really bad. It starts off strong, but let's talk. I could probably get through the positive things to say about this game first, and then continue to shit on it. So the positive marks. It looks good. It sounds pretty good. Samus is in it. And
that's a plus.
And Metroid's on the box. And there's some exploration. That's it. So there's positives are done. Now to the negatives.
Okay.
You play that entire game with a Wii remote turned like an NES controller. It's a 3D game. There are rooms where you walk in where you have to move Z, X, and Y, and you're doing it with the most uncomfortable tiny little D-pad you've ever done.
Yeah.
And then here's the kicker: when you're in a boss fight, the main gameplay hook gimmick that they came up with this was when you point the Wii remote at the screen, it goes into a first-person mode. So the idea was like, we're going to make a game that's kind of like Metroid Prime, and it's kind of like traditional Metroid games, but like put it all together, and here's this wonderful goulash, right? So that doesn't work at all. When you fight a boss and you go to turn to face the IR pointer at your TV screen, it's never in the right spot. It's always clunky. The boss fights are just...
How frustrating.
It's so frustrating. And that's... excuse me. That is the main takeaway of Metroid Prime. Well, there's two main takeaways. Number one is that it is oppressively boring. And this is where Samus gets a voice. And she talks like this the entire time you play the game. My boss doesn't like me. Oh, man, I really want my boss to be proud of me. I think I can be a good bounty hunter, but they don't believe in me. I'm not making that up. That's literally what it's like. She's super whiny. Like the story is that she's, I believe this is a prequel to the original Metroid. So like it's Samus, but like out of cadet training kind of a thing. So she's with this crew, and one of the guys on the crew is like a semi love interest, but also a father figure. So it's weird and it gets complex. And she never shuts up, and they never shut up. And it's so boring, and it controls like garbage. It is a terrible game.
Okay, so Metroid games aren't known for the story, which I'm going to bring up when we talk about Metroid Dread. But what you're describing sounds like they attempted to do more story and narrative, including into Samus's personality, than any other game, other Metroid game.
If I could birdwalk for just a bit here, and this game comes out in 2010, right? So in 2010, when you're making a video game, you're now making a movie. And this is something that I'm going to complain about when we talk about certain modern games and certain modern game design tropes. That's just what's going on in the industry at large. So you have your Uncharted's are out. Like you have more and more Hollywood people and Hollywood writers that are getting involved in making games. And that's fine. I'm not pooping on the whole thing. Like there are certainly modern games that I've played that are very well written, and they're as entertainment experiences that are interactive. Like, yeah, they're more leaning towards being like a movie directed experience, but like they're still gameplay and they're well made, blah, blah, blah. Perfect example of those, obviously, Last of Us.
Sure. Or Uncharted or
any of those
anything
games.
By Naughty Dog.
So Naughty Dog is Naughty Dog, and they're probably best in class in terms of being able to do this.
Yeah, I agree.
Team Ninja and Nintendo, quite frankly, are not good at this. And Nintendo really isn't good at this, and that's like kind of their core. Like outside of Zelda, and even Zelda doesn't have like, super like sprawling stories and stuff like that. It has a lot of lore, but there's not a lot of like good writing and dialogue. And I hope it never does that, by the way. Like I don't want that. That's not what I look for in a Nintendo experience. Just give me my Nintendo.
Yeah.
Do the thing that you've done for 40 years and are better at than anyone else, and give me that. But anyway, Other M is an example of them trying to do this. And
trying to be different.
Well, not so much trying to be different. That's the problem. They weren't. They were trying to like be a part of this trend of making more cinematic experiences out of video games.
Trying to be different within the context of other Metroid games and other Nintendo experiences.
Exactly.
While trying to keep up with the Joneses in terms of where the industry as a whole was going. And it failed miserably. And in fact, this game was critically panned. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like, there are worse video games to play. Ninja Bread Man exists. Like, it's not that bad. But in terms of Metroid games, it's bad. And in terms of like a game that was so heavily we're talking 5 years between Prime 3 and Zero Mission, and then also you have to go back to 2005 for a traditional Metroid experience, and then Other M is trying to sell itself as like a bridge between those two. It's like a Super Metroid meets Prime. And it just sucks. It's just a big stinky turd is what it is. And in fact, that game, I remember that game came out at $59, like every other or maybe $49, I can't remember with the Wii, but the price point that all Nintendo games come at, and then within like a month or two you could buy that game for $10. Already discounted.
Already deeply discounted. So, and it wasn't like Sin and Punishment 2, which was deeply discounted because no one knows what it was. That game was excellent. Other M was deeply discounted because word of mouth said this game sucks.
Oh, of course, because it's a Metroid game, so it's automatically going to say you don't really need word of mouth with that.
Right.
You just have an established brand, an iconic brand,
for sure.
So, I think a lot of people bought it, had buyer's remorse, and
yeah, that's exactly, and that's we all did, as it turns out. So that is Metroid all the way through. Briefly, we could talk about the 3DS. So 3DS has Samus Returns, which is the remake of Metroid 2, the Game Boy one. That's where I played it, and I have my precious moments stalls of that game right here. Here's one, and love it. Can't recommend it enough. I really hope they port that game to the Switch. There's no reason why they don't, because it's all 3D. You have to assume, and again, not knowing anything about how video games are actually made, like those models exist. I'm assuming all they have to do is flip a switch, and then
that's how it works.
And it just spits out the game, and you'll be good to go. But no, it's worth your time. I know you don't have a 3DS. Now 3DSs are getting stupid expensive because this is what happens. Like, Nintendo says, hey, we're done supporting this thing, and then people just hoard it. And then, hey, we're turning off the eShop, so you can't even buy these games anymore unless you have a physical copy. So then people come out and hoard it. So 3DSs are now getting hard to get. Physical games are getting hard to get. This is going to be one of them that's going to be hard to get because it came out towards the end of the 3DS's lifespan. So you got to assume Nintendo didn't make all that many copies. Well, they didn't make, Mario 64 amount of copies of this game. There's millions of them out there, but the problem is that there's people like me who never sell them. So that's why these things become expensive over time. But that's a great game. There is another 3DS game that came out called Federation Force, which is a soccer game, and that's all we need to say about it. It's a Metroid game where you play soccer, and you can play it online.
Is Kraid like the goalie or something?
No, so that's the thing. Like, someone made this game, and I forget who developed it. It's first party, but someone at Nintendo or second party made this game. It was a soccer game, and it was probably fun, and it was fine. And then someone said, hey, we haven't made a Metroid game in a while, because this came out before Samus Returns.
Yeah. So
they probably just said, hey, that dumb soccer game that Teddy made over there, go make it look like a Metroid game, and we'll release it. And that's what they did. And it came out. It's a popcorn fart. No one talks about it. No one cares.
So not exactly Super Mario Brothers 2 then?
No, it wasn't that. That recipe didn't work out in this scenario.
The second time.
Quick shout out to the Metroid game that came out on the original DS, which is Metroid Pinball, which is a fantastic pinball game. It's a legitimately good pinball game. There's also a nod to Metroid in a Virtual Boy game called Galactic Pinball. There's a table that's based on Metroid, also a great pinball game. So there you go. You have two pinball games that are both good that contain Metroid.
So Metroid, good for pinball, not so much for soccer.
Yes, and I know I'm speaking to someone who probably wouldn't pee on pinball if it was on fire, and that's okay.
When you put stuff in front of me, there was when we were visiting somebody and you put I forgot what the app was, but you could turn your Switch vertically and play pinball in there. That was actually really cool. Yeah. I enjoyed that.
Pinball rules, buddy. It's time for you to fully metamorphosize into an old man gamer and learn to appreciate the magic of pinball. It is such a fun thing.
My body is ready.
Yes, your body is ready. I can see it. So back to where were we? We did Federation Force, talked about the 2 pinball games. I think we're up to the Switch now, present day.
So now I come back in.
Now you can come back to the talk.
Tag me in.
It's
the hot tag.
Hot tag in. Boom.
All right.
Take it over, Anvil. I'm Brett, by the way. That makes no sense. I am Brett, and he's Anvil. What?
Well, all right. So got Metroid Dread. No, actually, I didn't get. Well, I bought Metroid Dread right when it came out.
Yep.
And then didn't play it because I had a whole bunch of other stuff I was playing. And then you suggested, let's do a Metroid show. And I said, great. I haven't played any Metroid game since Super Metroid.
Yeah.
So good topic. And then I thought, I looked it up online, says you can beat Metroid Dread in 10 hours. And I thought, I can do that over a weekend.
I can do this.
And so I started playing it last Friday, played it through the weekend, and did not beat the game. And I'm about at the 10-hour mark. I think I'm really far in, but I'm not quite at the end, I guess. I don't know if to give a reference point, if that would even matter, but I'll just give my impressions of the game.
Yes.
So first of all, I actually have a question for you before I even give my first impression.
Shooter.
There's no way that you beat this game on the standard difficulty.
Yes, I did.
That is very impressive to me because you've said on several of our shows that you're bad at video games.
Well, okay.
And I think this game is really
hard.
So
I'm bad at, there are select games that I'm not bad at. Like anything that's leaning towards like a 16-bit type of a gameplay, I'm fine with because I've done that for my entire adult life
that's
and my childhood.
Yeah,
that's my comfort zone. I'm good at fighting games because I love fighting games more than anything else, and I'm good at arcade games because I play a lot of arcade games. So your shooters, your Pac-Mans, your whatnot, all that stuff. But by and large, when it comes to your average fare, like just randomly pick off of a shelf game, like. Typically, I'm going to play that bad boy on easy, but it's really more to do with my lack of attention span and wanting to play more and more things than it is me being actually bad at video games. Now, that being said, though, when it comes to competitive multiplayer, I am horrible at video games. In a Call of Duty or a Halo, like I'm dying all the time, but I still have fun, so I still offer my body as a tomato can for those to murder. So anyway, continue.
So I found the game to be quite difficult. Not so difficult that I've gotten permanently stuck anywhere, but there are a couple boss fights. In particular, just one I played last night. It's like a bumblebee type boss.
Yeah.
Had some trouble with that. Have some trouble with the parry mechanics, which is, I guess, supposed to be an important part of the game. And
it's huge. It's so any game that takes the time to put a parry in. So let's say Street Fighter 3, for example, like. The reason why that's in the game is because if you don't learn it, you're going to lose.
I'm trying to not learn it because I just don't enjoy it.
You're going to lose.
Yeah. So this is, okay. We're not going to be able to resolve this on this show because we're going to do this after, but I think that there's input lag on my controller, and this is such an old man thing to complain about. That's messing up.
Thank you for doing it.
Yes, that's messing up my parry timing because it feels like it's slightly off. So I'm going to try it. I brought my Switch. I'm going to try my Switch with your controller on your dock.
Okay,
we hope, and I want to see if the parry timing feels any better. The other thing, though, and the reason I think that I'm not maybe crazy, but maybe I'm crazy. Is also there's a double jump mechanic in the game that you get pretty far the way in.
Yeah.
And I'm finding my damn double jumps don't work. So
it is a shinobi double jump is how it works.
Which means you have to dip a little bit before you jump.
At the very top. The
okay.
very top of the apex of the jump is when you do the double.
Well, that's just dumb.
So now you're gonna tell me how much you love stories in your video games.
Right. So the next thing I want to complain about is the story.
What timing?
Yeah, because there is a story. It's not, in my opinion, well described to the player, and a lot of the narrative that's given to you is given in these rooms that you're going to, these network rooms.
Yeah,
and then you're talking to a robot. Well, a computer robot, a computer AI, and it's got the worst voice ever. It's like, I just want to mute it, but it's telling you important dialogue information.
Yes, yeah.
And it's
this is all holdover from Fusion, by the way.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's just grating to get that information. So I didn't really like that. The Metroid, the story isn't like super important in Metroid, although I think that the way that the whole franchise is set up, you actually could do a compelling story if somebody did it right, because there's enough lore out there now that I think that that's possible.
Well, if the Mario movie is any indicator, I think Nintendo's now in the movie business,
Yeah,
so
that's
you
what-
may one day
like.
have that shot.
And I'm not saying that you have to do that, because I actually agree with your idea that you're not playing Metroid games for the story. You're playing for the Metroid-like qualities that they all have.
Well, I think atmosphere and gameplay and all that stuff is way more important in a Metroid game than any kind of story.
It's just it's the kind of thing that's out there that could be done right if it could be done in a way apparently better than it was attempted to be done in other M. Okay. I really like all of the hallmarks of the Metroid games, all the callbacks. When you get power-up items, it's the same graphic representation where there's some kind of creature holding up like an egg, and then you get the item that's held on the egg. Almost all of the power-ups are things that I got in Super Metroid, your morph balls, your freeze beams, your missiles. So all of that was just really fun to play again. Every time that you go into a room and there'd be a little ball that's like, ooh, what's my upgrade now? What item am I going to get now? Like that's a really fun experience. So I enjoyed all of that. As you've progressed in the game and you are able to make use of the different items, that's been really fun. One other minor complaint that I have, though, is that the game does this thing where as you get items, you're being told that you're more powerful, and you got this new suit, and now you take less damage. But then right after they do that, they very quickly put you in a room with a boss fight.
Yeah.
And the boss fights they basically scale to where you are in the game. So you never really feel much more powerful because you're just in the next room with the boss fight, and it's as difficult as the last boss fight was.
For sure.
And I understand that from a gameplay standpoint, it'd be kind of stupid if they gave you a boss fight and they're like, well, now you're awesome, so you're just going to kill all the bosses more easily until the game is over. But it doesn't, as I'm progressing, I'm getting to do all this additional stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like I'm actually more powerful. Certainly not when you're doing boss fights. And this game also has a number of mini boss fights, which are also quite difficult. So I've had some trouble with the boss and mid boss mechanics.
Okay.
Or, fighting those.
So let me jump in here and ask you two questions. Number one, to me, it sounds like overall you're having a less than ultra stellar experience with this game because you think it's too difficult.
Yes, my story complaints are a minor part of that too. Just overall, I actually thought you would ask me this question, so good on you for the chemistry. But
journalism,
right? So I think the original Metroid is like a 98 out of 100 game. I think that Super Metroid is like a 97, 98 out of 100 game. I would put this in around like 82 to 84, something like that. That's just where I would. But,
yeah.
And I actually didn't look up the Metacritic. I probably should have before we got. But that's just what it feels like to me. And it's not like any of it's bad. 82 to 84 is a good game, but and it's a throwback to the Metroids of yore.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel as epic as the first two Metroid games I played did.
Okay. I wonder. So for me, I loved Dread. I appreciated the challenge. I'm very grateful that it was as challenging as it was. The last boss fight that you are going to you're going to quit because that was the part of the game. I mean, I died a lot in the game for sure.
How important is parrying during that last boss fight? I'm sure that's probably not important.
You won't beat it. If you don't parry, you're not going to beat it, period. So you have to learn how to parry.
Stay tuned for our follow-up episode
where Brian beats the boss.
And Robbie complains about the game.
Yeah. So the challenge, I think, is a good thing. Although, like, that's a subjective thing. So, like, I get it. Like, if it's too much, then it's too much. I mean,
how about the Emmys? Those.
So that's my second question was how did you like that stuff?
Okay. I actually quite liked it.
Okay.
And at first, the first time they showed you what you have to do, and I was like, oh man, this is kind of a complicated thing where you gotta shoot it, and then you gotta shoot it a second time, but in a different
sneak
way.
behind it and all that stuff.
Yeah. Wait, what?
You shoot it and then you have to sneak behind it to damage it, don't you? Like once it's disabled in the front, then you go around it.
No. What? Well, I don't know. That's not what I'm doing. That would be amazing if that's a part of it. So this is one of two things. Either A, you're completely misremembering the game.
Yeah, that's possible.
Which would be funny.
Yeah.
Or B, I'm completely missing a really important mechanic of the game that would make these fights easier.
You did not know how the towers worked in Breath of the Wild. I mean, that's a thing.
Oh, the way better example of that is the most recent Mega Man game that I quit because I forgot how to slide in the game. I forgot there's a thing you do in Mega Man.
Yes, I totally.
So I was sending you text messages saying, "This game's dumb. I can't beat this thing." You're like, "Just push down and A, bro."
Yeah, down and jump is gonna get you that slide, and then you're like, "It was pretty good."
Yeah, it turns out the game's pretty good.
Yeah, turns out.
So with those the Emmys that they're called, they have this super steel plated front thing.
Yeah.
And you have this epic like machine gun that you get only for those fights.
Yes. Yeah.
And you shoot its front steel plated armor that's on its head, and then if you shoot it enough, you'll destroy that armor. Then you charge up your powerful photon cannon and you kill it by shooting a photon cannon shot at the head, but you can only get access to the head by removing the plating armor.
Right.
So that's what I've been doing. And then as you progress in the game, the creatures get faster. And then a really big part of that game mechanic is that you have to have time to actually shoot it to destroy that plate armor, unless there's a different way to do it. And so you got to like kind of run far away and then shoot it as it's coming at you. And later on in the game, they introduce different environmental obstacles so that you don't have that space to be able to attack it as it's coming at you, because then there'll be like a block or something that's in the way.
Right.
And so the most recent one that I did, you actually have to lure it to jump on the ceiling, and the enemy is on the ceiling, and the ceiling has enough space where you can actually blast its front armor off while it's crawling across the ceiling. That was pretty interesting. That's kind of a cool mechanic. So those fights, especially the more recent ones that I've done that are pretty hard, they were hard, but I'm not demeriting the game for that. I think it's a fine thing to add, and it is kind of terrifying when you're playing it. That it's called Dread. So you're supposed to be terrified. And so I think that was implemented mostly well. I'll give one other very minor critique really fast, which is that the very last Emmy fight, the one that I just did, you get a cloak that's supposed to make you invisible from the enemy.
That's right.
But the game has some kind of AI or something where it kind of cheats, and it's still.
Thank you so much. The game cheats, Robbie.
My two complaints so far have been the controller's broken and the game cheats.
Yeah.
So, Midlife Krisis, Brian. All the hallmarks we can throw back to me being 8 years old. You're getting all of them.
I'm here for it.
If you had asked me this question in 1988, I would have said the same thing.
Yeah.
So the game cheats, and the enemy, the Emmy, it's called EMMI. It's an acronym for something. It actually stays closer to you than it should if you're cloaked. So you can be cloaked and you can kind of run far away, but it still follows you, so that when your cloak comes off, it's pretty close to you. So it doesn't actually not know where you are.
Right. Okay. I love the Emmy stuff is great. Love it. They did it in Fusion and I loved it there too. In fact, I love that game mechanic. I'm a huge survival horror fan. So that mechanic of being chased by something that's like going to kill you if it catches you. Sign me up all day, every day. And that Let's Play we recently did of Clock Tower 3, like that's the game. That's what you do in the game. You hide from these killers, and there's like 4 or 5 of them.
That's not all that you do, Brian. You interact with some very compelling characters, too.
Namely Dennis. Mascot of the show, Dennis from Clock Tower 3. So, yeah, I love that stuff, and I'm a big sucker for it, so give me more of it. I'll give you my critique review of Dread, and then we can close up shop here, because we're going on 2 hours of Metroid talk here. I thought Dread was great. The story, I hear your complaints about the story and the delivery of same, but it never stuck out to me as something that was a negative. So maybe I just don't remember it enough.
Do you remember any of the story?
No. But that's about right on track. Like, I remember boss fights, and I remember areas, and I remember like the aesthetics and the things that I love about Metroid games. And I think that Dread delivers in every one of those categories.
This is true. All of it.
So for me, and also being someone who loves Super Metroid, I probably would say Super Metroid's my favorite in the whole series.
It was the first time that Metroid Dread that I heard Samus talk, and I remember like that's cooler to me than the story is.
Okay.
And by the way, she only had one line.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my god, she just said something.
She's got a voice.
I've never heard her talk before.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a revolution.
Yeah, for me, like that game, the year that game came out, would say and will say that was my game of the year. Like I loved Dread. So as a Metroid fan and all the boxes that I would want for a Metroid game to check, it did. I even like went back and tried to play through, and this is where I can say I'm bad at video games. I tried to play through on like they did a free update where they added like a hardcore mode.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I don't think you'll be playing that one.
No, I don't think so.
I tried it and I couldn't get very far.
Thank God Nintendo doesn't do trophies.
Yeah. Oh my God.
This would be the rest of my year.
Yeah. You would just be like in a bed somewhere in a home, like just trying to beat this game. But yeah, I loved it. I don't have anything too bad to say about it at all. I'll leave that to you. But yeah, so far it's like one of my. I'd probably put it in the top five Switch games of all time. I love it.
Would you put it up there with Super Metroid and the original Metroid?
No, I would go. Let's do that. I want to do two more things with this episode before we fill our tummies with very unhealthy food. Yeah. But let's quickly do a rank of. Let's just do 5 Metroid games.
Okay. What if you've only played 3?
So you'll do your top 3. You'll do your top 3. I'll do a top 5. And then I want to talk about what we expect from Prime 4, if anything at all. So let's do the ranking thing first. So for me, I'll go number 1 with a bullet, Super Metroid. Okay. Number 2, I'll go Zero Mission. And then number 3, I'll go Prime Remastered. 4, I'll go Original Metroid. And then 5, I would put Dread. So Dread's at the bottom of my top 5.
Okay,
but overall, I put Metroid in like my top 3 video game series of all time.
Right.
So being number 5 of what I consider one of the best series of all time is a pretty good spot to be, and it matters because I said it. Okay. So what's your top 3, Robbie?
So number 3, Dread. Mm-hmm. Number 2. Okay, so I'm going to just make a comment briefly. Number 2 is the original Metroid, and number 1 is Super Metroid. So that's the list.
Yeah.
However, I kind of almost want to give bonus points to the original Metroid because, and we've talked about this offline with other game series, I really appreciate when something brings something totally new to the table.
Yeah.
Super Metroid perfected what original Metroid invented.
That's fair, yeah.
And so you have to say Super Metroid is better because it's just the perfection of the thing. It's the next step. But if you have two things and you go from 0 to 80 with original Metroid and Super Metroid takes you from 80 to 100, then you could say Super Metroid's the better game. I am saying that. But don't sleep on original Metroid because it was doing stuff that nobody else was doing in a really, really important way. Totally. So it's no slight to the original Metroid to say that it's the second best Metroid that I've played of the 3.
Okay, so those are our comprehensive and very well plotted out lists that we have provided the people. Yeah. Let's talk about Prime 4 quickly before we sign off here and what you expect of it. You go first because you're going to have a lot less to say, I think.
Yeah, correct. I maybe after I play Primes 1, 2, and 3. I'm talking about 4. But I will say that you and I hung out, I think the day that they announced the cancellation of the Prime 4 that they were working on. Yeah,
that's right.
And we were both like talking about like, are we disappointed by this? And we both agreed we weren't at all.
Yeah.
We never actually saw anything from the Prime 4 that was announced. And Nintendo kind of did it pretty cool where they said, we're just rebooting this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the subtext was what we had been working on just isn't working.
Good enough. Yeah.
Right. Now, I've waited like 10 years for Pikmin 4, and I'm about to get that.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt that Nintendo will eventually give a Prime 4 game. And now it's been about 4 years, I think, since they announced that reboot. So maybe we'll get some more information.
No, well, yeah, the reboot, but the original 4 announcement, I think, was 2017.
Right. Yeah. No, but I mean just the reboot. So so whoever's, and you said you think it's Retro working on it now, right?
Yeah. I know for a fact it's Retro.
Okay. So that's good too, right? Because they have a pretty good track record with
their
Metroid
series.
games.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything to say about Prime 4 except that given that background, I'm pretty excited for it. Yeah. I'm way excited for Metroid games now. And when that game comes out, when we do a show on it, I'll have played Primes 1, 2, and 3, and it'll be awesome.
Yes.
Get all this great new content, and then we can play Prime 4 together and then talk about it.
Talk about that, yeah.
While it's current.
Yes. So for me, I'll say 2 things. First thing, this is a prediction. I think Prime 4 is coming out on whatever the Switch 2 is. I think we're going to get another delay. Hold on.
Oh no.
I think it's going to be a what's it called? A Twilight Princess release where the original Switch will get a version.
Okay. Yeah.
But then like the Switch 2, the 4K 60 version.
But that means it's at least a year and a half away though.
Yeah, and I think that is the case.
Okay.
But I think that's because they're developing it. They've been working on it, and like I think a game like Metroid Prime, like having more power to do more graphical flourishes is only going to benefit it.
Yeah.
Because like that's the type of game that it is. It's just it's a visual deal.
Gives me more time to play the first 3.
Yeah, there you go. And I think Prime Remastered has done so well, both critically and financially. It's sold really well. So obviously sold better than Nintendo thought it did because they ran out of copies of it.
Right.
So I think that's all good news. But yeah, I think that that's my prediction, and I certainly could be wrong, but I think we won't see Prime 4 until we see the next Switch, whatever that might be. And then in terms of what I'm expecting gameplay-wise, again, going back to how good Prime Remastered is, now they've set that bar, which they did when the original Prime came out on GameCube. Like they said, like, no, we can make a 3D Metroid, and we can make it like a 10 out of 10. So now they have a lot of like proving to do now.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Dread was excellent. But Prime Remastered like is a better everything about it, that the game, like graphically, all of it's better. So now to put 4 on that, like you're putting this game in that company. So they have to deliver, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that they're going to, but I will say what I believe is that I think they're going to.
You're going to be mega hyped for that one, right?
Yeah, I'm super hyped for it. I'm probably right now, like in terms of like these, you know how there's always like a game like a Half-Life 3 or a Shenmue 3. Although one of those came out. One of those did come out. But there's like a game like you always have like a game that you'll like, you know, has been long in development or it's teased or announced, and you have all these years to. So Prime 4 has been that game for me since it was first announced as just a logo.
Half-Life 3 is that thing.
Yeah, there you go. And I think Prime 4 is coming out, and I don't think Half-Life 3 is coming out.
That's right.
So there's that.
Woe was me.
I think it's all it's sunshine and rainbows for the Metroid series from here on, and I don't anticipate another Zero mission happening ever again.
Wait, or other.
No, not Zero mission. Other M.
Yeah.
I want more Zero mission.
Yeah.
Make me super high quality Metroid games, please.
For a loop there.
Yes.
Boy, you got high standards, Ember.
Yeah, no, you're damn right I do. And with that, I will say, here comes that thing again. We're gonna use that one more time.
Thank you for all the good times, Metroid.
Thank you for all the good times, and thank me for my wonderful mastery of Mario Paint to provide these graphics exclusive here to Midlife Krisis.
Graphics are great. The colors need a little bit of work.
I don't know. I think that's pretty good. There's a comparison here.
I don't think there's any red at all in that Mario Paint picture.
There it is. Okay, so anywho, let's sign off. That's Metroid. Thank you so much for watching, and join us next time for whatever it is that we're going to be talking about. I'm sure it's going to be good.
All right.
Gentleman's handshake.
Gentleman's handshake.
All right. Oh.